Mr. President, I wonder if you could say just a few words about what do you think is the status of democracy on the continent of Africa today?
Well, I think all along, Africa and its people have been practicing democracy, but their democracy was violated by the forces of colonialism and imperialism who invaded our continent and colonized us. So democracy is not new to Africa. Now we are just reinforcing it by providing education to our youth, because education is the key to knowledge. So therefore, every effort should be made by all Africans, those on the continent and those in the diaspora, to ensure that the future generation of the Africans are educated in different fields of economic endeavors.
Are you pleased with the level of citizen participation in the democratic process, specifically in Namibia, sir? Yes,
democracy, as I said, has been a practice in Africa. And our democracy was destroyed by the forces of colonialism and the foreign occupation. So we are just now reinforcing what we have lost. By so doing, we have to spend more resources on education and training of our youth.
How is the government dealing with this deficit that's been caused by the long period of colonialism?
Well, I think Africa is on the way. Can you say in Namibia here we are very proud that we have established the University of Namibia. All faculties are now in place, including the School of Medicine. We are training our doctors here, School of Pharmacy, and Faculty of Engineering and Information Technology at Ongwediva in the northern region, and almost practically in every region we have some faculties in order to ensure that all our children are able to attend universities within their regions.
Mr. President, as you were inaugurating the third president of this republic, you were also celebrating 25 years of independence. It seems to be a remarkable record that has been accomplished in those 25 years. What is it that is the secret to Namibia's achieving so much in such a short period of time relative to some others, not only on the continent of Africa, but perhaps elsewhere in the world? Is there something special about Namibia?
No, we have programs here. As I said, the first program, the main program is education and training. And then, of course, we have also other programs to ensure that we provide also night school to our elders. So we pay great attention to education and training. And also to the unity of our people. We know our people were divided on ethnic basis by the forces of colonialism. We have, after independence, there was a Bantu education, Bantu stance here, deliberately created by the minority white South Africans. You know, the police of Fumalana, Ferrevoort, Dodgers, and the Botas, that the indigenous people on the continent were inferior to the white people. So we have a lot of work to do, especially in the field of education and training.
Do you think the land issue, the land redistribution, will that be solved?
Well, our government have a policy on land redistribution to the entire population, irrespective of color or race or places of origin.
There seems to be some resistance to the program that the government is offering to buy the land from those who hold large parcels of it to redistribute. Will that be resolved constitutionally?
Well, I think that the policy being promoted by the racist regime or those whites who do not want to share the lands with the indigenous people. The land belonged to the indigenous people. When white people came here, they came empty-handed, so the land belonged to us all.
So you're optimistic that it'll be resolved?
If they don't want it, we have the capacity, I think, to ensure that we can take over the land.
Mr. President, I'll come back to Namibia, but I'd like to ask you about some other things on the continent of Africa. As you look across not only southern Africa, but across the entire continent, are you pleased, considering what your perspective was 25 years ago as you got independence, are you pleased with what's happening on the continent?
Well, of course, when you refer to the continent of Africa, this is a huge continent and a very rich continent. So the whole world looking at the continent of Africa to come in for exploitation of mineral resources. So I think Africa today is the richest continent on earth.
But as they take your natural resources, Mr. President, should they give something back in terms of introducing more manufacturing using those natural resources here?
No, we are just first in a process of educating our own population. Because when we talk about development, we have to make sure that every Namibian citizen is able to participate in the economy, but they need to be educated and trained in all those different fields.
Some of the controversy, probably more in Europe and the US than in Africa, is the role of the West versus, say, the Chinese or some others here. Do you see a difference between those different forces and their activity here in Africa, the Chinese, the Americans, the British, and so on?
Oh, all along, the Chinese people have been very friendly to the people of Africa. Even before colonialism and the whites' invasion of Asia and Africa, already there has been some commercial trade between the people of Asia and Africa. So this is not new. We just have to do it now in a modern way. And China, luckily, they liberated themselves earlier than us, so they are now economic advanced. They are now in a capacity to go to the moon, like all other advanced nations, like the Europeans and the Americans. So Chinese are friendly to African people. I don't want you to have an impression that this is what you heard from the imperialist news media, that Chinese are invading Africa. I think that is completely nonsense.
Do you think that the West is actually playing an appropriate role here? Could the West be more constructive in Africa? Western nations?
Oh, well, West nations, we just consider them like other nations. So I don't think they superior as they've been thinking all along.
Well, they were the colonialists.
So we are now free and independent. We think first what we should do for our people. As I have earlier said, I think if we concentrate more all efforts and the more resources we should be spent on education and training.
Your Excellency, I'd like to ask a couple of questions now about some of the things that Africans have done to work together. And I'm thinking specifically about some of the regional organizations like SADC and also the continental organization like the African Union. Could you describe what you think has been the constructive roles of organizations like that for the African people?
Yes, I think we should strengthen the African Union more with a clear purpose of ensuring that in our lifetime, the United States of Africa will be implemented, where Africans will carry one passport with one president. So we will be one continent as we were before the invention of colonialism and imperialism.
Europe has tried that most recently, not necessarily with one president, but with one currency. Is that the model that Africa should follow?
Pardon?
Europe has tried this union. It's done it with a currency rather than with a single president. Is that the model that Africa
I
should
don't
follow?
think Africa, really, Europe is now really more or less nothing comparable to Africa. They don't have resources. We have resources here on the continent, and Africa certainly should be competitive with the rest of the world. No, I think as I have earlier, I wanted to emphasize the importance of education in order to ensure that Africa is in a position to manufacture what we have here right now. Still, we are exporting our copper. This equipment that we use here are made from copper. It can be made right here. We have plenty of copper here. But we are now exporting it in raw form to be manufactured in other countries. This is what we wanted to eliminate.
What does the AU have to do to make itself more visible?
No,
to-
I think it's the responsibility of all member states of the African Union to ensure that they educate their people, that they belong to the African continent, and this is what the youth should be brought about, that they must work hard, they must make sure that the United States of Africa is achieved in our lifetime.
One of the things that
As we were colonized, we fought to liberate ourselves. And today we are all happy that you can travel now from east, west, north, south on the continent of Africa without necessary carrying a pass or somebody to ask you who are you, where are you going to.
One of the things that people in West Africa said that they were a little peeved that if they wanted to go to South Africa, they had to get a visa. Is that still a challenge to have the movement of people on the continent? It's an ideal, but are we there?
Oh, to obtain a visa, just to carry a force indicating who you are and the way you are, where you intended to go. So I think that is not a big problem.
You mentioned, as I said before, education several times. One of the things that seems that all African countries have in common is high unemployment of youth. How can governments tackle that problem?
I
in
think
addition-
unemployment will continue for some time because it takes time to educate an engineer or a doctor. It takes some years. And some countries just achieve their independence, so like ourselves, we cannot be compared with the countries that have been independent for a long time. But we are on our way, and I think the plans we have for the total liberation of the continent of Africa involve education and training.
Your government, the three governments, I guess, from the very beginning have really emphasized education. Is public education free for elementary school and high school students in Namibia?
Yes, education is free here, from primary to secondary, and of course it will go up to the university level. That is the main aim of the Swapo Party government.
The partnership between my university and the Namibian university is the Polytechnic of Namibia, and they are coming along with science and technology. Are there going to be campuses of these universities throughout the country, in other regions up north and so on?
Yes, the main aim really is to make sure that in every region we have some faculties of the University of Namibia and the Polytech.
Mr. President, I would like to come back now and ask about just a couple of the other regional organizations, ECOWAS, SADC, those that represent other regions. Do you think that long run they will replace the role that Europeans and Americans, mostly Europeans, have played here in things like peacekeeping on the continent of Africa?
Oh, peacekeeping, it depends on where the violence is taking place. If it's in Europe, I'm sure that at the European level, if they are not able to contain their situation and ensuring that their people live in peace or elsewhere. So the United Nations is there to.
Well, I was thinking more about the Europeans sending their forces to Africa, as France recently did in Mali, for example. Is that a role that Africans should be playing for themselves?
I think it depends really on individual African member states. I think here in Namibia we have the capacity to ensure that the peace and stability prevail in our country, and also to work hard to ensure that there is every Namibia child has food to eat and able to go to school up to the university level. And that is the aim of the African Union, of course.
Mr. President, turning back specifically to Namibia now, a civil war that resulted in independence 25 years ago. Are there still challenges of reconciliation of different groups that were divided before the war?
Oh, that ethnic conflict was created by the minority white settlers. They wanted to divide us on Bandustans, bad education, inferior education, deliberately designed by the whites. So we know what they wanted to achieve, or they wanted to create confusion among us. So I think we are grown up, we have the capacity to decide what is good for us.
Mr. President, as I come to the end of my questions, I would like to ask you to reflect on what messages you would like in your experience and your wisdom to give to different groups around the world, and specifically in Namibia, starting with the new government of Hage Geingob, the president. What advice would you give him?
No, Comrade Dr. Hage Geingob, now President of the Republic of Namibia, has been at the beginning of the struggle. We were together in exile, and we started together. We created a three-pronged strategy. One, to politicize the Namibian people, to be ready to fight for their freedom and independence. Secondary, also to educate them about Africa, that Africa is one. We were just divided by the colonialists, and in this way we will be able to, our youth will be able to understand. And the third one is armed liberation struggle. If the colonialists don't want to accept our demand to self-determination and national independence, we launched the armed liberation struggle. And this is what we did on the 26th of August 1966, up to 21st March 1990.
And what is your legacy for the Namibian people, Mr. President?
Well, my message to the Namibian people is to remain united and maintain peace and stability and development. Because where there is no peace, there can be no development. So because I believe that a united people striving to achieve a common good for all members of the society will always emerge victorious.
Mr. President, one of the reasons I started this program, African Democracy Project Namibia, which started with African Democracy Project Mozambique, followed by Botswana, Liberia, and Ghana, and now Namibia, was because Americans are, shall we say, less than informed about Africa. What would you say to the American people about Africa?
Well, first of all, the Americans and all other foreigners must respect Africa. African Africans, those on the continent and those in the diaspora. And whoever doesn't want to respect Africa, we respond with the force.
Mr. President, one of the things that I think I've heard a lot of controversy about is both negative and positive about foreign aid. Has foreign aid been a positive thing, or is it time for it to end?
I never consider foreign aid to be something valuable. We must depend on our own resources on the continent.
So, and that's been the legacy of foreign countries here, that handing out money that not necessarily having a lasting impact.
No, foreign countries we can trade. Yeah, to get what we don't have here on the continent, and then give them also what they don't have on their countries or their continents. We promote commercial trade between the nations and peoples.
As individual nations or as groups?
No, with the nations, whether Asian, Europe, or American, and so on.
Namibia is classified as an upper middle income countries, not, and that puts you in a position that you have resources to accomplish all of your needs, and you think you can do that if there were equitable trade among nations.
No, we have the capacity, of course, to exploit the resources we have here in Namibia and on the continent as well as to trade with the other foreign countries.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
You are most
I
welcome.
appreciate it indeed.
Yeah.